This is Bishop Michael Burbidge, and you are listening to the Walk Humbly Podcast.
Welcome to the Walk Humbly Podcast. My name is Billy Atwell. I'm the Chief Communications Officer for the Diocese and your co-host. Those who are listening to this podcast, you're benefiting from the generosity of thousands of people throughout this great diocese who have given each year to the Bishop's Lenten Appeal. The BLA, as we call it, supports many ministries throughout the diocese, one of which is the Communications Office, which has made all of this possible. Thank you so much. If you haven't already, please make sure you rate this podcast and write a review wherever you're listening to it. You can also sign up for our e-newsletter at arlingtondiocese.org. Follow Bishop Burbidge on Twitter, at Bishop Burbidge, where every day he provides a short gospel reflection for that very day. You can also follow the diocese on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you have a question for Bishop Burbidge, send it to info@arlingtondiocese.org, or you can call us at 703-831-7013. I welcome your host, Bishop Burbidge. Bishop, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Billy. I hope all of our listeners are doing well. It's amazing how quickly this summer has gone by. It was this past week was able to meet and celebrate Mass for our Catholic educators and youth ministers and DREs, and now our students. Most of our students are back to school. It's hard to believe how quickly it went by. I remember the old days. Maybe some of our listeners do, but everything started, like school started after Labor Day.
Yeah.
But right now it's like we are in full gear. So I hope everyone was able to get some time for rest and renewal and refreshment.
Absolutely. Bishop Burbidge, on August 14th, a massive 7.2 magnitude earthquake hit Haiti, causing a tremendous amount of damage. It has killed to date 2,200 people as of the latest reports, injuring others. It's actually destroyed 50,000 homes. A small bit of good news, there were 20 adults and 4 kids who were previously reported as missing that have been recovered in the rubble there. Unfortunately, this has gotten overlooked by a lot of news outlets because of other news that we'll get to in a minute. But how did you respond to seeing this news? Haiti just keeps getting hammered with natural disasters, and the people there keep suffering. And so, how did you respond? And then, how can we help?
I know it really is. It is so sad to see Haiti enduring so much suffering, and the recent description of the earthquake and the loss of lives, and it is just, your heart just is broken for all the people in Haiti, for all they have suffered in recent years, and yet another disaster. And my prayers, of course, I know I speak for all those who are listening, go out to the people of Haiti and to anyone who has family or friends in Haiti.
Yeah.
I know how concerned and unsettling this is for you. And we know that the earthquake, Billy, did not just impact those who passed away and their family and friends. It's really they're brothers and sisters. They're our part of our family, and so the entire nation, the whole world, feels the suffering. I don't want people to feel helpless, though. There are things that we can do, and certainly one way is to provide resources, to raise money that will go to relief efforts. And so we've asked our pastors to take a voluntary collection. I know some parishes have already done that, and others will do so in the next couple of weeks. And as always, our people here in the Diocese of Arlington are always so generous, and those funds, through the work of the conference, go directly to provide relief.
That's
and
right.
There's a very secured process. So I do say, we, as broken, as heartbroken as we are for the people in Haiti, we know there are 2 things we can do. And don't underestimate the impact of both. And that is, number one, prayers. Prayers for those who have died, for prayers for have lost loved ones, and also our own generosity.
Absolutely. Bishop, we're on the cusp of the 20th anniversary of 9/11, which is hard to believe. I keep thinking of all that's transpired between that time and now, and obviously with everything going on in Afghanistan, it's fresh on people's minds. And when we think back to the tragedy of that day, which impacted this diocese and this region in a very personal and direct way, we remember the immediate tragedy, but we also remember the tone of the nation soon thereafter. A lot of the divisions crumbled away. We saw unity we hadn't seen in a long time and haven't seen since, frankly. What do you remember from that day? And do you have any ideas for how we get back to that point of unity?
Yeah, I think everyone can remember exactly what they were doing and where they were that day. It's a day that we'll never, a tragic day we'll never forget. That day was actually one of the saddest days in my life. I was rector of the seminary at that time. And
St. Charles Borromeo.
St. Charles Borromeo. And we were actually, all the seminary, the entire seminary community, we were actually on buses at the time of the attacks, going sadly to the funeral of a young seminarian.
Oh, wow.
So here we are, sad, for that, reality. And then, the news came our way of the attacks. And, we had seminarians at that time, as we do now, studying at St. Charles Seminary. So there were quite a number of seminarians from the Diocese of Arlington on those buses whose parents, worked at the Pentagon or in D.C.
Wow.
And so, our fear for our country was also made very personal about their own parents. And so, like everyone else, we just watched in horror, and we began the rosary, we began praying. So we do remember that day with such sadness. But you're right, though, when you mentioned that when we think about that time, we also can remember the first responders who put their lives on the line to rush to the Pentagon and put out the fire and tend to those in need. We know in New York, many first responders lost their lives. They should be remembered forever for their selflessness, their sacrificial giving as true heroes in the best meaning of that word. On that day, I know we're working on a video highlighting how this diocese has, how we were impacted as a diocese locally. I know on that day, I wasn't here at that time, of course, but I know that on that day, two of our priests rushed to the site. Father McGraw actually was on the road, and he witnessed the plane hit the Pentagon. Father DeRosa was Our Lady of Lourdes, and they rushed right over, as what any priest would do, rush over to be present. The church bring the saving power, the healing love of the Lord, be present, and so our first responders and all who did so much to help, we remember with just great thankfulness. And, following the immediate response of the plane hitting the Pentagon, the church in our area continued to help those who were suffering, of course, with funerals and grief counseling and all those things. I think it's an important thing to remember, too, about our church and people of faith and goodwill, that even throughout the world, that when a tragedy occurs, the church is there to offer immediate support, of course. But we never leave. We remain after natural disasters and terrorist attacks, economic collapses. Through challenging times, the church is there to help people endure and eventually thrive despite the circumstances. Because what do we have to offer? We have to offer that in the midst of suffering, in the midst of a cross, that's not the end. We have the beautiful truth that God is present, and from all of this, we are assured of His victory and glory. Your other question is certainly the question of the day. I think we all remember, there was a spirit of unity after that tragic day. We witnessed it at stadiums and in cities, and people just, embracing each other and singing "God Bless America," and it didn't matter, whether you were a Republican or a Democrat or, what background you were from. We were in this together, and we were, as a nation, reflected the unity that makes us, who we are and who we are supposed to be. And our unity, I think, only will continue to be reflected in such a way when, in the midst of what we're seeing now of division and harsh rhetoric, and it will only get back to that unity when we are reaffirming the sacredness of all human life, which therefore gives a respect to each and every human person. We're all created by God. We're all part of God's family. And if we truly believe that, then even in the midst of such political tension and discourse and all kinds of issues to defend, we'll even in the midst of that, we'll treat each other with respect and lovingly, and know that unity is possible. And so pray God. I mean, we pray God every day that we have peace throughout our world, peace in our own nation, and the unity that makes us who we are and who we should be. One nation under God. And we should pray for that.
You gave an interview recently to WMAL. It's a package that they haven't published yet, but about 9/11, and the woman acknowledged that, would God Bless America even be played now at some of those stadiums? And you mentioned that, and I thought about that more afterward, and thought about how part of unity is there's something that binds us, and it's not just national, love for your nation, love for your country, and things like that. There's something else, and you've talked about the unity that is ours in Christ. Well, as that breaks away, it would be hard even for a tragedy to bind us, because there isn't that glue left in our culture. That's we've got to rebuild that as well.
We got to rebuild that as well, and again, we have to pray for that. We need some divine assistance here, and we need to be proud of who we are, as created in God's image and likeness, and God who allows us to live in a land in which we are free, and have so many abundant blessings.
And as you spoke about this issue and the kind of the opportunity that's in front of us, I almost look at the time between now and this anniversary as almost like a preparatory period for us to ask ourselves, like, how am I contributing to the unity that I want to see? How am I contributing to the peace that I want to see in society? And almost, if you want to really honor those who died in 9/11, whether they were first responders or on those planes, let's begin now and prepare ourselves for that.
That's a great point. That's a great point, because it's not only should we remember those first responders, but we should also honor them. And what better way than, as you just mentioned, we pledge anew to be an instrument of peace each day, an instrument of unity. It's who we're called to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Your Excellency, the biggest news in recent memory, at least, has been the tragic end to the U.S. presence in Afghanistan. We've seen in recent days the Taliban has retaken the country from Afghan security forces and did so in a lot less time than was predicted even by the intelligence community. This is a truly historic unfolding, and it certainly impacts our area because there's a lot of defense contractors and military, and so this is obviously on a lot of people's minds, but particularly here. As Catholics, how do we follow this issue? Because it's not over. There are still potentially thousands of Americans behind enemy lines still, and Afghan SIVs, as we've spoken about, these individuals who have served our country in different capacities. So how should we follow this issue, and then what should we consider first when we're thinking through the implications of a situation like this? Yeah,
it's true, and the images that we see online and on TV of mothers throwing their babies to U.S. military men and women, it's just awful. It's just so sad to see. It's hard to see that this situation has broken down so quickly. So again, we don't underestimate the power of our prayers, being united in prayers. And I know our parishes are including Haiti, Afghanistan, and the intention specifically, as we should continue to do so. And pray God that our priority is to ensure that United States citizens, military and civilian, get out safely. They cannot be left to chance or to the evil forces. We must also ensure that we live up, I believe, to our moral obligation of getting the interpreters, the translators, the cultural consultants out of Afghanistan. They served our military. They kept them out of harm's way as much as possible. And we know what will happen to them if they're left there. And so I think, pray God, every effort should be made to evacuate them safely. And we must also keep these prayers for the people of Afghanistan. Their future is just, it's just so frightening to think about what the future looks like right now. We're certainly aware of how the Taliban operates. And, Billy, this also gives me the opportunity to talk again. So what do we do in the midst of evil, in the midst of suffering? Well, we know there are things we can do, and we can contribute positively in assisting. And so it gives me the opportunity, to talk about our work of Catholic Charities here in the Diocese of Arlington.
Absolutely.
We are one of 3 resettlement agencies in Northern Virginia designated by the State Department to receive and place newly arrived Afghan families who received a special immigrant visa, SIVs they call them. It's important, I think, for our listeners to know that we have resettled 326 SIVs since July 1st, and 196 of them are from Afghanistan, and 2,600 over the past 6 years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's incredible. The people, come here with very little, and we're there to often meet them right at the airport and to begin that resettlement process. 15% of Afghans who come to the United States as SIVs, and again, that's the special immigrant visa, settle in Northern Virginia.
Yeah, there's a large Afghan
and
community.
we expect, just in preparation for this podcast, just to give the most current information, we expect to resettle between 900 to 1,200 in the next 12 months.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm asked, what do I mean by the SIV? It's granted by the government to individuals who have assisted American government and military operations abroad, as I mentioned, primarily as translators or contractors, and whose lives are in danger if they remain now in their home country. Life are in danger, threatened of being killed.
Yeah.
So all refugees and SIVs go through an extensive vetting process by multiple federal agencies before being issued the visas. And as part of the resettlement, Catholic Charities help to integrate these SIV holders into American society.
Yeah,
I mean, they're coming to
it's a lot different than Afghanistan,
right?
Yeah, there's a lot to adjust to.
It's a whole new world. You can't imagine. Can you imagine just coming with nothing and trying just to start over in a whole new land? So we help to secure housing. We help them to learn English, gain an understanding of our American culture, update resumes, secure employment, help children enroll in school, and provide additional education support. Catholic Charities began participating in Operation Allies Refugee on July 30th, serving several incoming plane loads of evacuated SIV holders from Afghanistan in a emergency effort. And Catholic Charities staff is also providing legal assistance for paperwork completion, translation, child activities, and other essential resources to men and women and children at Fort Lee, Virginia. Many of these SIV holders then travel on to destinations elsewhere in the United States to settle with family already residing in this country. I was told before our podcast that about 35 of those Afghan SIV holders who came to Fort Lee in August are settling right now in the Diocese of Arlington.
Exactly.
So, dear friends, an opportunity to assist. You can imagine what is needed. You come to a new country in leaving a very dreadful, fearful situation. You can imagine emotionally the toll it's taking. But even materially, you have nothing. So we want to, again, ask for the generosity of those in our diocese to provide things that would be helpful. Basic things like household goods, lightly used furniture, things for children, like clothes and diapers and bassinets or all those kind of things, toiletries, basic necessities. And Billy, maybe you can explain to our listeners, because I know the desire for the people in this diocese and people of goodwill throughout our communities is so significantly great to help. And we want to mention 2 specific ways that they can help. So maybe you can give the details.
The 2 easiest ways to provide some of these goods that Bishop Burbidge just mentioned. The first is, if you want to know exactly what's needed, there is an Amazon wish list that we've set up where you can purchase it, and it goes directly to our migration refugee services, and all the products there are exactly what we know folks are going to need. So if you want to provide those, go to ccda.net/refugee wish list. Again, ccda.net/refugee wish list. And there's another way. There are parishes that are doing drives to collect goods, and they're loading them up and then bringing them over to migration refugee services. If you're a parish that wants to do that, go to ccda.net/MRC donate. That's Migration Refugee Center donate. That's going to be the best way. But as much as there are definitely needs, these folks, as Bishop Burbidge mentioned, come off the plane with a lot of times 1 suitcase for a whole family, with 4 or 5 kids, and they barely have enough to get them through the plane ride in the first couple days. Right. They need a lot of things. But the biggest need is actually long-term housing. Within 3 months, they have to be self-sufficient, and Catholic Charities guarantees rent for the first 3 months. But because they were translators and these professionals, they're often able to find jobs here in the area. If you know of anyone who has property for rent, that is the greatest need, is that there are people coming that we have nowhere to place them. And that is a real tragedy. So again, reach out to Catholic Charities, ccda.net. If you know anybody who has property to rent that might be willing, again, the first 3 months are guaranteed by Catholic Charities, and these people have to get jobs within those first 3 months and are then self-sufficient from there. The point of this is self-sufficiency. They don't want to be dependent on us forever, right. and they're hard workers. So again, please reach out, ccda.net, if you'd like to help in any of these ways, especially in the area of housing.
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning that, Billy. And also just profound thanks to all those of our team, Catholic Charities, and those working in the Refugees Resettlement Office. Countless hours of selfless, generous, dedicated service, greeting and embracing people with such compassion make us very, very proud of our diocese and of our church. And, and it's always important to remember that Catholic Charities, and in the situation that we're talking about here now, we embrace and seek to help all people. It's not just Catholics. People who are refugees who share different faith, we're there to help them. And it goes back to what we said earlier in our podcast, is because we are all members of God's family, and our embrace is wide, to embrace all God's people. And again, I think that if we could say what is the theme of this podcast, it probably would end up saying it's prayer, because we also need to be praying for the safety, the well-being, and God's blessings upon all those who are going through this difficult situation. But again, a word of thanks to the selfless individuals who are so part of this beautiful, essential ministry at this time.
Absolutely. Bishop, a little over a week ago, you published a catechesis on the human person and gender ideology. Since then, you've been asked to appear on a lot of different Catholic media outlets. It's been published in some secular outlets. It's picking up a little bit of steam there. So again, it's called A Catechesis on the Human Person and Gender Ideology. It's available at arlingtondiocese.org for those who want to read it. For those who haven't read it, however, could you describe what it is, why you created it, and who is it really intended for? Who is the audience you were looking for?
Sure, and I would encourage, as you just did, for people to read the document. We put together a great team of people, who have expertise and wisdom in science and philosophy and theology, and pastors. We worked very hard on this document to make it readable. To make it readable. Mm-hmm. So it's it's a document that's intended, especially for parents, for teachers, for people who say, of course, Bishop, I believe that God created us in his image and likeness as a man or woman. And believe it or not, I'm being forced to defend this at school or in my workplace or community. I just need the language that will help me to explain that this is the truth, but help me to explain, why this is truth, why this is true, and why we believe it, and to bring that message in a loving and compassionate way to others. So this is what we call a catechetical document. It's a teaching of the church. It's what we believe, and we always strive to teach the truth in love. And so I would say, yes, this document is the truth, but it is presented in love, which is how we should always speak to one another. I never thought it would be countercultural to say that God created us either a man or a woman.
Yeah.
I mean, that, as we know, we that's rooted in it's human reason alone. A person of any faith knows this, that the human person is an embodied soul, the composite of the spiritual and the physical. We are created either male or female, and that is genetically determined at conception and present in every cell of our body.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so we accept, and receive how God has created us, and we want to reach out. We know that in society and even in our own communities, there is gender confusion and dysphoria, and people who claim, I've been created as a male, but now I think I'm a female. Well, we want to say to that person, we want to be here to walk with you, to accompany you, but we have to begin with what is true.
Right.
If you begin to try to help someone with something that is false, that's going down a path that is going to cause more confusion and actually more suffering. And even, studies will show that. So if we love someone, we speak to them in truth. And we work with them to help to understand, well, what are the issues? Why are you experiencing this? And to provide the support and the counseling that would support. So I think it's intended to speak to parents, to teachers, to all of us who want to speak about this sensitive issue in a truthful way and always compassionately. We say very clearly in this document that anyone who is experiencing confusion with their gender and in no way should any person ever be treated harshly or bullied or any way. We as people who follow the gospel can never allow that. It's always with respect. But because we respect and because we love, we speak in truth. And dear, I have to say to our listeners, and we knew this was coming when we issued a document. We were well prepared. I mean, overall, we knew we were going to receive overwhelming support because we're teaching the truth, and overwhelmingly it has been supported. But certainly there have been some attacks on this document. We knew that would come, and unfortunately, we speak the truth in love, and it is unfortunate to see that people who disagree with us often do so harshly and without respect. So, we want to be mutual in the respect we have for one another. And on that point, I do have to say to our faithful, to our listeners, is that we cannot let our voices be silenced here. We can't be. I know. Sometimes to embrace this document and to bring it to others. Yeah, you might be rejected, you might be ridiculed, you might take a hard time for it. So what? Don't be afraid. Be courageous. This is the truth. Say it lovingly, but this is true, and we cannot allow others, because they're going to label us or whatever, to silence us. That just cannot be the case.
Yeah, I remember when I read the document for the first time. It was pretty much in its final form at that point, and the first thing I thought was how caring it was. And you talked about, speaking the truth is countercultural, but you've said in interviews, I've heard you say that, well, the way we convey the truth in this document is also countercultural, because like you said, we're met with untruths spoken harshly.
Right.
Well, that's the common way issues are debated in society right now.
Right.
It's also a hallmark of your ministry, though, that you are always express such effort to be respectful of people and to make them feel, to know that they're cared for and loved. And you've reflected that in this document. How important was that to you going into it, that was conveyed throughout, that we never said the truth in a way that would at least unintentionally feel, harsh?
From the very beginning, and this document went through, various drafts, and so we wanted to make sure, theologically, with the use of human reason, philosophically, that we, were speaking in a very clear and concise language. But through it all, and everyone on the team, wanted this to be pastoral, reaffirming the respect that we owe to each and every human person, and compassionate, and to also speak to our parents. Many families are impacted by these issues, and as you walk with someone through this issue, you're constantly reminding them, I'm speaking to you because I love you, and it's because I love you that I tell you what is true and what is real. It is, I have to say though, and I've heard this from many parents, and I'm very, very glad to see how vigilant so many of our parents are being, that what is being taught to their children, especially those who are attending some of our public schools.
Right.
You have to know what your school board is saying. You have to know what's in the curriculum. And I've been, very inspired by parents who would say, wait a second, if I'm sending my child to your school, this isn't part of what I'm asking you to do, and so it's good that we are bringing the truth and the faith out into the public arena, and so the parents need to be vigilant. Of course, in our Catholic schools, this is the truth that is taught so beautifully to our children each and every day before parents come to our schools from a public school or something like that. We want to make sure that they know your child's going to be loved in our school. It's going to be treated, he or she's going to be treated compassionately. But here's what we believe about the human person.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that that's a good fit for them.
Yeah, Catholicism isn't just a culture; it's a truth statement,
right? Yeah.
By going to a Catholic school, here, this is what we believe. The last section of the document is specifically directed to those who are going through gender dysphoria or having experienced some sort of gender confusion. You've gotten a lot of questions about that, very positive, questions. I think people were very happy to see a very pastoral message to those who are struggling, knowing that you're part of our family, we love you, and we want to take care of you. If anyone listening is in that position, or they have a child experiencing that, share some of that message with them, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like we said throughout the podcast today, the church is always there. Pope Francis always reminds us that no matter what the issue or what the struggle someone is going through, we are always there to accompany, to walk with you. And so we're available. We're available. I know our priests, our counselors are always there, to assist and to help and to guide and to provide the spiritual nourishment you need. No matter what our cross or no matter what our issue is that we're dealing with, we need the guidance of the Holy Spirit. We need the nourishment that comes from prayer and the sacraments, which is available to any of our faithful who are dealing with this issue. So the church must be carrying out what the Lord told us, and the Lord promises people, I will never abandon you. The Lord Himself always taught the truth, because He loved, but He promised no one will be abandoned, and that's who we are as a church, and that's who we are as a diocese.
And you mentioned the counseling resources. You just blessed a grotto at Divine Mercy University, where they're very active in helping equip their students. And how are you going to help people that are going through this issue? This is becoming more common. So how do we serve in truth but with love through professional resources that?
And that's that's the kind of counseling that I do advise for our parents who you may need to seek that kind of support, that they use the science of psychology and the profession of counseling and the wisdom and grace of theology, and so that help is out there, that help is available.
Absolutely. Bishop, we went through a lot of big topics here, some very sad things, some opportunities for hope, but what are your final thoughts, and then if you would send us off with a
just
blessing.
one final comment on the document itself, that on the catechetical on the human person and gender ideology. It's, again, I would ask people to I know some outlets are covering, but actually read the document itself. Yeah. It's very readable.
It is accessible, like you said. If a knucklehead like me can pull it off, anybody can read it.
And then there's endnotes. So for the people who want to really, dive a little deeper into it, we provide a lot of resources that they can go right to direct sources if they wish to also. So I would really certainly encourage that. Like you said, Billy, we did go through a lot on this podcast. We're well aware of so many alarming and sad situations throughout our world, even many issues, including division within our own country. And so let's renew ourselves to be praying for the peace that only Christ can give throughout our world, for the courage we need always as followers of Christ to teach His truth in love, and to be courageous in practicing and sharing our faith with others, but always with the grace and strength that comes from the Lord, the divine assistance that He offers to us, and pray that we will walk humbly with our God. Thank you for listening to the Walk Humbly podcast. Make sure you check out more episodes on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and Spotify. You can follow me on Twitter at Bishop Burbidge, where I offer gospel reflections each morning and share photos and updates of what is going on in the Diocese of Arlington. Stay up to date with news, event information, and inspirational content by subscribing to our e-newsletter at arlingtondiocese.org.